The healing tent smelled like blood and wolfsbane, a combination that never quite masked the underlying stench of death. Theron Blackstone sat on the edge of a cot stained dark with the lives of men who had bled out before the healers could reach them, watching the young woman work with the focused intensity of someone who had learned that distraction meant more bodies for the pyres. 15 years of border wars had taught him that lesson in 1,000 different ways, each one carved into his body in scars that no amount of wolf healing could fully erase. The healer's hands moved with steady precision despite the exhaustion that made her fingers tremble. She had been tending the wounded for 2 days without rest, ever since Theron's raiders had struck what their scouts swore was a northern supply cache. It had been a refugee shelter. 47 wolves, elders, pups barely old enough to shift, all dead beneath the ruins of buildings his men had set ablaze. The memory sat in his throat like poison. She pressed a cloth soaked in blessed water against the gash across his shoulder, where a northern warrior's blade had nearly taken his arm. The wound burned with the peculiar sting of silver-touched steel, the kind that resisted even alpha healing. Theron closed his eyes against the pain and felt his wolf surge beneath his skin, wanting to shift, to run, to escape the weight of 47 faces he would never forget. "Hold still, Commander. This needs to be cleansed properly, or the silver will fester." Her voice was low, roughened from shouting instructions over the screams of dying men. Theron opened his eyes and looked at her properly for the first time since stumbling into the healing tent with what remained of his raiding party. She was perhaps 30 winters, though war aged people in ways that had nothing to do with years. Dark hair pulled back in a braid that had come half undone, revealing streaks of gray that caught the lamplight. Eyes the color of storm clouds, ringed with shadows so deep they looked like bruises. She met his gaze without flinching. No deference, no fear. Just the flat assessment of a healer evaluating damage. "Everything hurts, healer. Make it quick so I can return to my men." The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something darker, more resigned. "You have been saying that for 15 years, Commander Blackstone. Still here, aren't you? Surviving is not the same as living." The words escaped before he could stop them, raw and honest in a way Theron rarely allowed himself. He blamed it on blood loss, on the bone-deep weariness that came from 3 days behind enemy lines, with perhaps 4 hours of true sleep, and nothing in his belly but dried meat, and the metallic aftertaste of violence. She paused in her work, the cloth hovering over his wound. For a moment, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. The understanding of two people who had seen too much and survived too long, and were beginning to wonder if there was truly a difference between the two. Then she returned to cleansing the wound, and the moment passed like smoke. The tent flap opened, and Marcus Greywind ducked inside, his leather armor dark with blood that was not his own. Theron's second, his shield brother, the man who had stood at his side since they were pups, barely old enough to hold practice swords. 15 years later, Marcus still had his humor, but it was the gallows kind, the jests you made when the alternative was howling your grief at an uncaring moon. "We have a problem, do we not always?" Theron watched the healer work and tried to read Marcus's expression from the corner of his eye. His beta had the look of a man delivering news that would make an already catastrophic situation worse. "The prisoners. The Alpha wants them dealt with before we move at dawn." Dealt with. Such a clean word for such bloody work. The healer's hands stilled. Theron felt her attention sharpen, even though she did not look up from binding his wound. Listening. Processing. He filed that awareness away for later, the way she had gone utterly still at mention of the captives. "How many?" 23. Mix of warriors and support folk. The Alpha says they will slow us down. Northern scouts are closing from 3 directions. Theron knew what that meant. Knew the law of the pack. Knew the brutal calculus that had kept Shadowmere's raiders alive through 15 years of grinding warfare. They were 3 days deep into northern territory with enemy trackers converging. They had already lost 2 men to the refugee campfire. Could not afford to lose more guarding prisoners who would howl for their packmates the moment they were freed. The mathematics were simple, terrible, undeniable. 23 die or 8 die. The healer tied off the bandage with more force than necessary. "There, try not to get yourself carved open again before moonrise." She stood and moved to the next patient without looking back, but Theron saw the tension in her shoulders. Saw the way her hands trembled just slightly as she reached for fresh bandages. She had heard, she knew, and she disapproved. He wondered if her disapproval would matter in 6 moons when this God's cursed war was still grinding men into the earth. Probably not. Theron found the healer again 3 hours before dawn. She was in the far corner of the healing tent, updating her records by lamplight. Scrolls and vellum spread before her, neat script documenting wounds and treatments and the names of those who would never rise again. Her hands were clean now, scrubbed until the skin looked raw, but there were still traces of blood beneath her fingernails. The mark of her profession in a war where the wounded far outnumbered those trained to save them. She looked up when he approached, and something in her expression told him she had been expecting this. "Cannot sleep, Commander? Have not slept in 3 days. Do not think I remember how." She set down her quill and leaned back against the supply chest she was using as a writing desk. In the lamplight, her face looked carved from pale stone, all sharp angles and deeper shadows. Beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Functional. Deadly if you were careless. "Your shoulder will need another application of silverleaf salve before you depart. I will have it ready. That is not why I am here." "I know." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither wished to speak aloud. Outside the tent, the camp was settling into the uneasy quiet that passed for rest when you were deep in enemy territory. Sentries pacing the perimeter. The occasional cough or groan from wounded raiders. The distant sound of northern wolves howling to each other across the dark miles, coordinating the hunt. Theron moved closer, not crowding, just closing the distance enough that they could speak without being overheard. "What is your name, healer?" "Alara Voss, and you are Commander Blackstone. Everyone knows the warden of the Shadowmere border." "Do they?" Hard to mistake the man who led the raid that just burned 47 refugees alive. Her voice was flat, clinical, the same tone she had used while cleansing the silver from his wound. Theron felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. This was shame. The recognition that she was right, and there were no words that would make it less true. "Our scouts said it was a supply cache, weapons for northern raiders. Your scouts were wrong. It happens often in war. Does not make the bodies any less dead. Does not make the pups any less burned." "No, it does not." Another silence. This one sharper, edged like broken glass. Alara's eyes never left his face, and Theron wondered what she saw when she looked at him. A commander doing his duty. A killer making excuses. A man drowning in choices that all led to more death. Perhaps all three. "Why are you here, Commander Blackstone?" "Because tomorrow I am going to execute 23 prisoners by sword and fang. And I wanted to look at someone who still thinks that makes me a monster." "Does it?" "I no longer know." Alara stood, and the movement brought her close enough that Theron could smell the herbs on her skin, mixed with something warmer beneath. Sweat. Exhaustion. The scent that was purely her. Something his wolf recognized, even though he could not name why. His senses sharpened, pupils dilating. Every instinct in his body suddenly screaming mine in a way that had nothing to do with tactical thinking and everything to do with base animal need. He saw her breath catch, saw her own pupils blow wide with answering recognition. Whatever this was, it ran both ways. This is a terrible idea. Everything about this war is terrible. One more mistake will not tip the scales. She reached up and touched his face, fingers tracing the line of his jaw, where old scars crossed new. The gesture was gentle in a way that made Theron's chest ache. When was the last time someone had touched him with gentleness instead of necessity? When was the last time he had allowed it? "Tomorrow you might die. I might die. We might all burn on northern pyres. Yes, tonight I need to feel something other than death." Theron understood. Gods help him. He understood completely. The need to feel something beyond fear and exhaustion and the weight of command that sat on his shoulders like a physical thing. The need to touch another person and remember he was still more than just the uniform and the rank and the 15 years of killing. He kissed her, and she kissed him back. And for a few stolen hours in a tent that smelled like blood and wolfsbane, they pretended the war did not exist. Dawn came too fast and too red, painting the eastern sky in colors that reminded Theron of arterial spray. He left Alara sleeping wrapped in his cloak and found Marcus already awake, checking the edge of his blade with the methodical precision of a man preparing for something he did not want to do, but would do anyway, because that was the law of the pack. The prisoners were being held in a makeshift pen, hands bound with silver-laced cord that burned against wolfskin. 23 captives in human form, most silent, some weeping. One, a boy who could not have seen more than 16 winters, was praying to the Moon Mother in a northern dialect Theron recognized from intercepted messages. Border region. probably conscripted like half the wolves fighting this war on both sides. Marcus appeared at his elbow, sword already drawn. The Alpha confirmed the order. They will slow our retreat. Cannot risk freeing them. Cannot spare the men to guard them. Theron knew all this. Had known it since yesterday when the scouts reported northern trackers closing their pursuit. Knowing did not make it easier. He looked at the prisoners and saw the 16-year-old boy and wondered if this was what the old songs meant when they spoke of the price of command. 23 lives weighed against 8. Simple arithmetic, devastating calculus. Make it clean, they deserve that much. Marcus nodded and began giving orders to the squad. Theron watched them line up the prisoners, watched the 23 realize what was coming, watched the boy stop praying and start screaming. Then Theron drew his own blade and executed the first prisoner himself, because if he was going to order it done, he was cursed well going to swing the steel himself. 23 executions, one by one, some by sword, some by shift and fang when the blade work proved too slow. Marcus with tears streaming down his face as he killed. The squad stone-faced and mechanical, doing what needed to be done. Theron counting each death, each face, each pair of eyes that went from terrified to empty, memorizing them. Because if he was going to do this, he was going to remember every single one. Remember them until the day his own blood soaked into foreign soil. He owed them that much. Elara was standing at the edge of the healing tent when it was finished. Close enough to hear the screams, close enough to smell the blood. Her face was bone white, eyes huge and dark with something that looked like horror and disgust and betrayal all mixed together. Theron sheathed his blade and walked toward her and watched her take an involuntary step back. That hurt worse than the silver-touched wound on his shoulder. Worse than the nightmares he knew would come. Worse than anything except the looks on the prisoners' faces right before he had killed them. You just murdered 23 people. I saved my 8. That is the arithmetic of war. Do not you dare call it arithmetic. Those were people. That boy was 16 winters old. He was praying to the Moon Mother when you cut his throat. And if I had freed them, they would have called in their pack. My men would be dead. So yes, 23 for 8. That is the trade I made. Alara's hands were shaking. Theron saw blood under her nails again, and realized she must have been tending the prisoners earlier, the ones he had just killed. She had given them water and bound their wounds and tried to ease their fear, and he had opened their throats. There was a man I treated yesterday in that pile. You executed a patient I had healed. Then you should not have wasted your skills on him. The words came out cold and hard, and he saw them land like blows. Saw something break in her expression. Not her spirit. Alara Voss did not break easily. But whatever fragile connection they had built in the stolen hours before dawn, that shattered like glass. She turned and walked away, and Theron let her go because what else was there to say? What words could possibly bridge the gap between a healer who saved lives and a commander who ended them? None. There were no words for this. The raiding party made it back behind Shadowmere's border by midday, harried the entire way by northern scouts who never quite committed to a full attack. By sunset, they were reporting to King Aldrich himself, and the mission was logged as a tactical success. 47 civilian casualties in an intelligence failure. 23 enemy combatants neutralized during tactical retreat. 8 Shadowmere raiders returned alive. The numbers balanced, the mathematics worked. Theron could not sleep for 3 days, and when he finally did, he dreamed of 23 faces. He did not see Alara Voss again. 2 weeks later, she requested transfer to the rear healing stations. Personal reasons. The request was approved immediately because good combat healers were valuable. But rear positions were chronically understaffed, and nobody questioned a healer who had spent 3 years in the blood and mud wanting to step back. Theron signed the transfer documents himself and told himself it was better this way. Told himself he was relieved she was gone. Told himself many lies that did not help him sleep. The war ground on for 7 more years. Bloody, brutal. A meat grinder that consumed a generation and spat out broken wolves who remembered what it was like before, but could not find their way back. Theron rose through the ranks the way warriors did in wars that lasted too long. Attrition and skill in equal measure. By year 18, he was Alpha Commander of all Shadowmere's border forces. By year 20, his father King Aldrich was dead and Theron wore the crown. The old king died of wounds suffered in a border skirmish. That was the official story. The truth was poison and political maneuvering, and a chief advisor named Corvus Ashenblade, who believed some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud. Theron never proved it, never even tried, because Corvus was probably right, and the kingdom needed stability more than it needed justice for one old wolf. So Theron buried his father with full honors, and took the throne, and tried to learn how to be a king when all he really knew was how to be a warrior. It turned out there was not much difference. Both required impossible choices. Both demanded you live with the consequences. 7 years after the executions, Theron stood in the war room at the dark hour before dawn, because sleep was still a luxury he could not afford. The maps spread across the table showed the same stalemate they had shown for moons. The armistice held, barely. The Northern Pax wanted a formal peace treaty, wanted reparations, wanted acknowledgement of atrocities committed by both sides, wanted things Theron could not give them without destabilizing the fragile coalition that kept Shadowmere from fracturing into civil war. Marcus found him there, as he did most mornings. The beta brought warmed wine and sat without asking, because they had stopped standing on ceremony somewhere around year 10, when Marcus had dragged Theron out of a northern ambush, and Theron had returned the favor 3 weeks later. "You have not slept, have I ever?" "Not since the prisoners." They did not talk about it. Had not talked about it in 7 years. But it was there between them always, the weight of 23 bodies neither could forget. "Council meets at midday. They will push for the wedding again." Theron grimaced. The wedding. His betrothal to Isolde Valen, daughter of the Valen Pax Alpha, a political necessity that felt like another kind of cage. Isolde was a good woman, intelligent, capable. She had lost her mate in the same war that had taken so much from everyone. She understood duty and sacrifice and the difference between love and alliance. That did not make the prospect of binding himself to her any easier. Let them push. I will agree eventually, just not today. Marcus studied him with the careful attention of someone who had known him for 25 years. "What are you waiting for?" "I do not know." That was a lie. Theron knew exactly what he was waiting for. Waiting for the nightmares to stop. Waiting for the weight on his chest to ease. Waiting for some sign that he had paid enough penance for the things he had done in the name of tactical necessity. Waiting for absolution that would never come. The diplomatic mission to the border territories was supposed to be simple. Negotiate trade agreements. Reassure the neutral settlements. Show Shadowmere's strength without threatening renewed warfare. Theron went, because a king who hid in his castle while asking his people to live on contested borders was a coward. Marcus came because Marcus always did. The negotiations with Aldrich Ironmaw, the Northern Pax Alpha, lasted 3 days and accomplished nothing. Aldrich wanted a truth commission, wanted public acknowledgement of the 47 refugees, wanted justice for families who had lost loved ones to what looked very much like murder when you stripped away the military justifications. Theron could not give him any of it, not without risking the coalition, not without exposing himself and his warriors to trials, not without watching the fragile peace collapse. So they talked in circles and signed nothing, and agreed to meet again in 6 moons to talk in circles some more. The tavern sat exactly on the border between Shadowmere and Northern Territories. Neutral ground where wolves from both sides could drink and try to forget they had spent years trying to kill each other. The owner was a grizzled veteran who had lost both legs in year 12 and had no patience for anyone who wanted to refight the war inside his establishment. Marcus insisted they stop there on the way back. Said Theron needed to see his people, needed to remember there was more to the kingdom than maps and council chambers and the endless grinding weight of rule. He was probably right. The tavern was crowded, loud, smelled like ale and sweat and too many bodies in too small a space. Theron found a corner table and sat with his back to the wall because 15 years of warfare had made that automatic. Marcus got drinks, and they sat in companionable silence, watching veterans try to drown memories that would not stay buried. The music started as the sun set, a bard with surprising skill. The dancers appeared as the moon rose, 5 women in costumes that left little to imagination, moving to a slow, driving rhythm. The crowd loved it, cheering and calling out. Theron barely paid attention until the woman in the center spun and lamplight caught her face. His entire world stopped. 7 years. 7 years since he had last seen Alara Voss. 7 years since she had walked away from him covered in the blood of men he had executed. 7 years of telling himself it was better this way, that she was safer away from him, that whatever they had shared for one night in a healing tent, did not matter against the weight of everything else. 7 years of lies that shattered the moment their eyes met across a crowded tavern. She recognized him. He saw it in the way her breath caught, the tiny stumble in her movement, saw shock and fear, and something else flash across her face before her performer's mask slammed back into place. Then she kept dancing, kept moving with that same focused grace he remembered from watching her work in the healing tent. But now there was something else underneath, something deliberate, challenging. She was looking at him, dancing for him, or perhaps at him. Theron could not tell the difference and was not certain it mattered. Marcus followed his gaze and went very still. Oh, by the Moon Mother. Yes, that is her. The healer from the... I know who she is. The men at the next table were talking, voices carrying. The one in the center, she is something. Been here 2 years. Will not go home with anyone. 3 offers of bonding, turned them all down. Maybe she is waiting for someone, or maybe she is wise enough not to tie herself to a broken warrior. Theron's hands tightened on his cup hard enough that the wood creaked. Marcus put a hand on his arm. Warning. Reminder that starting a brawl in neutral territory would create exactly the kind of incident they were trying to avoid. The music ended. The dancers held their final poses. Alara was breathing hard, chest rising and falling, eyes still locked on Theron's. For a moment that stretched like eternity, the crowded tavern fell away, and it was just the 2 of them and 7 years of unspoken words. Then she ran, spun and fled through the back door so fast the other dancers stumbled in confusion, disappeared before Theron could move. Stay here. Theron was already up, already pushing through the crowd. Behind him, he heard Marcus swearing and calling his name, but he did not stop. Could not stop. Because Alara was here, alive, real, and he needed to know why. Needed to know how she had ended up dancing in a border tavern instead of healing in some safe rear station. Needed to know if she still looked at him and saw a murderer. The night air hit like a slap. Cold, clear. Theron's wolf surged, senses sharpening, tracking the scent trail Alara had left. She had run east, toward the cluster of small dwellings that housed the tavern workers. He followed. The cottage was barely more than a shack. Single room, rough timber. The kind of place that spoke of poverty and making do with whatever coin you could earn. Light showed through gaps in the shutters, movement inside. Theron approached the door and raised his hand to knock. It opened before he could, but it was not Alara standing there. It was a boy. Perhaps 7 winters, dark hair, gray eyes that were far too familiar, wearing clothes that were clean but worn, mended in places. He looked up at Theron with the solemn expression of a child who had learned young that the world was hard and you survived by being careful. Can I help you, sir? Theron could not speak, could not breathe, because the boy's scent hit him like a physical blow. His scent, mixed with Alara's, the undeniable truth written in the primal language of pack bonds and bloodlines. This was his son. The boy tilted his head, studying Theron with an intensity that was achingly familiar, because Theron had seen his own father do the exact same thing 1,000 times. The gesture was pure Aldrich, pure Blackstone blood. Are you looking for someone? I need to speak with Alara. Mother, someone is here for you! The boy turned back into the cottage and Theron heard rapid movement. Something falling, a muffled sound of distress. Then Alara appeared behind her son, her face white as fresh snow. She looked at Theron and he saw every emotion he was feeling reflected back. Shock, fear, resignation. The knowledge that this moment had been inevitable for 7 years, and now it was here and there was no avoiding it. Theron's eyes dropped to the boy again. 7 winters old, conceived the night before the executions, carried and born and raised while Theron had been wearing a crown and trying to forget the healer who had looked at him with disgust. He is mine. Not a question, a statement, cold, flat, undeniable. Alara's composure shattered. Tears started streaming down her face, silent and unstoppable. She reached for the boy, pulled him against her side in a gesture of pure protective instinct. Please, please, Theron, do not take him from me. Please, I am begging you. The boy looked between them, confusion giving way to fear. Mother, what is wrong? Who is this man? Alara was shaking now, full body tremors. You can hate me. You can do whatever you want to me. But please do not take my son. He is all I have. Everything. Please. The boy pulled away from his mother and planted himself between her and Theron. Small fists clenched, chin up, trying to be brave even though Theron could smell the fear rolling off him in waves. My mother is not bad. She works hard so I can eat. She takes care of me. She is the best mother in the world." And just like that, something in Theron's chest that he had thought long dead cracked wide open. This child, his son, standing there defending his mother from a stranger he did not know, was his father, showing more courage at 7 winters than most warriors showed in a lifetime. The boy had Alara's fire and Aldrich's bearing, and something else that was uniquely his own. He was perfect. I am certain she is, but that does not change what is true. Theron's voice came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat and tried again. "You are my son, heir to Shadowmere. Your place is in the castle, not here. I am not going anywhere. I am not leaving my mother." The boy's voice cracked, but he held his ground. Theron felt pride surge through him. Admiration. The first stirrings of paternal love he had not known he could feel. "What is your name?" "Ronan." Ronan, it was a warrior's name, strong. "Are you afraid, Ronan?" The boy's chin trembled, but his eyes stayed steady. "Yes, but I will not let you hurt my mother." "And if I promised I would not?" "Why should I believe you? I do not even know you." "Fair enough." Theron knelt slowly, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. Up close, the resemblance was impossible to deny. This was his son, his blood. A piece of himself he had never known existed. "You are right. You do not know me, and I do not know you. But that is going to change. Because you are my son, Ronan. And I have dreamed of having a son as brave and loyal as you." The boy blinked, confused by the shift. "Dreamed?" "Yes, someone who would defend what he loves, someone strong, someone who stands for his people even when he is afraid." Theron reached out slowly and rested a hand on Ronan's shoulder. "Someone exactly like you." "I do not understand. Why do you want to take me away?" "Because you deserve more than this. You deserve training, education, a life worthy of who you are. You deserve to know your heritage, your pack, your kingdom." "But what about my mother?" Theron looked up at Alara. She was still crying, silent tears running down her face, still shaking, still terrified in a way that made him feel like the worst kind of monster. "She can come with us." Ronan spun to look at his mother. "Mother, are we going?" Alara could not speak, could only stand there trembling while her world fell apart for the second time in 7 years. "Be ready at dawn, both of you." Theron stood, and Ronan surprised him by grabbing his hand. The boy's fingers were small and warm and trusting in a way that made Theron's throat tight. "You promise? You promise you will not hurt her?" "I swear it. On my honor as Alpha and King." Ronan nodded slowly, and Theron saw the exact moment the boy decided to trust him. Saw it in the way his posture relaxed just slightly, in the way his grip on Theron's hand tightened. "Then you cannot be all bad? Bad people do not keep their promises." Out of the mouths of pups. Simple faith. The belief that honor still meant something, that words still mattered, that a man who gave his oath would keep it. Theron hoped desperately that the boy was right. He left them there and walked back toward the tavern in a daze. Marcus was waiting outside, pacing, looking ready to start a war single-handed if necessary. "We need to leave, now, before this becomes complicated." Too late. Theron kept walking, heading for the rooms they had rented at the inn. Marcus fell into step beside him, reading his body language the way he had learned over 25 years of fighting together. "What happened?" "I have a son." Marcus stopped walking, just stopped dead in the middle of the street and stared. "You have a what?" "A son. 7 winters. His name is Ronan." "The healer, from the prisoners, the night before you?" "Yes." Marcus scrubbed a hand over his face, and Theron saw the same rapid calculation he had already done. The timeline, the implications, the absolute disaster this was about to become. "Oh, Theron, this is very bad." "I know. The council will lose their minds. Corvus will call it a threat. The northern packs will say you fathered a pup on one of their healers and abandoned him. The alliance with Valen will—" "I know, Marcus, I know all of it." They reached the inn and climbed the stairs in silence. Inside the room, Theron sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. The weight that had been pressing on his chest for 7 years suddenly felt crushing. Marcus poured them both drinks, handed one to Theron, sat in the chair across from him. "Tell me what you need." "I need to get them both to Shadowmere before Corvus finds out and tries to make this go away. I need to claim my son publicly before the council can argue. I need to figure out how to protect them without destroying the kingdom." "Tall order." "Yes." They drank in silence. Outside, the sounds of the tavern carried through the night. Music and laughter, and the kind of loud talk that came from too much ale and not enough sense. Inside, 2 warriors who had survived too much tried to figure out how to navigate one more impossible situation. Marcus finished his drink and set the cup down carefully. "The boy, you believe he is yours?" "I know he is mine. I can scent it, see it in his face, feel it in my bones. And Alara? Theron closed his eyes and saw her face. Saw the terror and desperation. Saw 7 years of survival etched into features that had once been soft with compassion. She raised him alone. Dances in a tavern to feed him. Lives in a shack that barely has 4 walls. All because I executed 23 prisoners in front of her and she fled rather than face me as king. You do not know that is why she left. Do I not? Marcus did not argue. Could not. They both knew. Both remembered the look on her face that morning. The disgust, the betrayal, the shattering of whatever fragile thing they had built in the hours before dawn. We leave at first light, take them both straight to the castle, announce the boy as my heir before anyone can object. And if they object anyway, then they can take it up with me, directly. There was steel in Theron's voice, the tone of command that had led armies and won battles and held a fractured kingdom together through will alone. Marcus recognized it, accepted it, nodded once. I will arrange the horses. How many guards? Just us. I do not want this becoming a spectacle. Theron, you are the king. Traveling without proper guard is... I do not care. This is not a royal procession. It is a father claiming his son. And what about the mother? What about her? Are you claiming her too? The question hung between them. Heavy. Complicated. Impossible to answer because Theron did not know. Could not know. Alara was the woman who had seen him at his worst and rejected him for it. The woman who had raised his son in poverty rather than come to him. The woman who looked at him tonight with fear instead of the heat he remembered. The woman he had never stopped thinking about even when he told himself he had. I do not know what I'm doing, Marcus. I just know I cannot walk away. Not from him. Maybe not from her either. Then you better figure it out quickly. Because dawn is coming and this is about to become much more complicated. Dawn came painted in shades of gray and gold. Theron stood outside the cottage and watched the sun climb over the border hills and wondered if this was what redemption looked like. If claiming responsibility for a child he had never known could somehow balance the scales against 23 executions and a war's worth of sins. Probably not, but it was a beginning. The door opened and Alara stepped out, Ronan beside her. They had packed light, 1 bag each. Everything they owned that they could not carry was being left behind. Alara's eyes were red but dry. She had cried herself empty during the night. Now she just looked exhausted and resigned. Ronan, by contrast, looked excited. The fear from last night had been replaced by bright-eyed curiosity. He was getting an adventure, getting to see the castle, getting to meet his father's world. He had no idea what he was walking into. Ready? Alara nodded. Ronan grabbed Theron's hand with the easy trust of a child who had decided the stranger was safe. Marcus brought the horses and they set out as the border town was waking. 3 riders heading south toward Shadowmere, toward the castle, toward a reckoning 7 years overdue. Theron rode with his son in front of him and tried to figure out how to be a father when all he had ever learned was how to be a warrior. Behind them, the sun climbed higher and the border town faded into memory. Ahead, the future waited with all its complications and consequences. And for the first time in 7 years, Theron Blackstone felt something other than the crushing weight of command pressing on his chest. He felt hope. The journey south should have taken 3 days. They made it perhaps 2 miles before everything went to hell. Ronan was riding in front of Theron, small body tucked against his chest, chattering about everything they passed with the endless energy of a 7-year-old discovering the world was larger than one border town. Alara rode beside them on a mare Marcus had procured from the inn's stable, silent and watchful, her healer's instincts constantly scanning the horizon as though she expected trouble. She was right to expect it. The pain hit Ronan without warning. One moment the boy was pointing at a hawk circling overhead, the next he was screaming and convulsing in Theron's arms. His small body went rigid, back arching, fingers clawing at his own skin as though trying to tear something free from the inside. Theron nearly lost him. Only 15 years of combat instinct kept him in the saddle as he fought to control both the panicking horse and his seizing son. "Ronan, what is wrong?" But the boy could not answer, could only scream as his bones began to crack and reshape, as his first shift tore through him with all the subtlety of a lightning strike. Children did not shift. Not at 7 winters. The youngest recorded first shift was 11, and that had been considered dangerously premature. 7 was impossible, unheard of. The kind of thing that happened in ancient legends about bloodlines so pure they bordered on divine. or so powerful they frightened even their own kind. Marcus wheeled his horse around, hand going to his sword on pure reflex. "Get him off the road, now, that surge of power." "I know," Theron knew. Every wolf within 5 miles would have felt that massive pulse of raw alpha energy, friend and foe alike. They were still in the border territories where Northern scouts patrolled, and neutrality was maintained only because neither side wanted to restart open warfare over minor provocations. A power surge this enormous would bring wolves running from both sides. Alara was already dismounting, healer instincts overriding everything else. She reached for Ronan, and the boy latched onto her with desperate strength, still screaming, still convulsing. His eyes had gone molten gold, pupils blown wide, and Theron could see the wolf trying to claw its way out through skin that was not ready. "Off the road, there." Marcus pointed to a cluster of rocks 50 yards east. Just enough cover to hide 3 people and 3 horses, if fortune favored them. They made it in 30 heartbeats that felt like hours, every moment expecting to hear howls or shouts as Northern scouts converged on their position. The rocks provided minimal shelter, but it was better than being exposed on the main road. Theron dismounted and helped Alara lay Ronan on the ground. The boy was making sounds no child should make, animal whimpers mixed with very human sobs of pain and terror. "What is happening to him?" Alara's hands shook as she tried to examine Ronan, but the boy was thrashing too violently. "First shift. But he is far too young. This should not be possible. Make it stop. Please, make it stop hurting him." "I cannot. He must ride it through. His wolf is too strong to suppress." Theron had never felt more powerless. All his training, all his experience, all the battles won, and impossible situations survived. And he could do nothing to help his son, except kneel there and watch him suffer through what should have been years away. Ronan's spine arched one final time, and then the shift completed. Where a 7-year-old boy had been, there was now a wolf pup. Small, black fur with silver streaks, gold eyes huge and terrified. The pup looked at Theron and whimpered. Something in Theron's chest cracked open. Some wall he had built to survive 15 years of war just crumbled to dust. This was his son, his pup, frightened and hurting and looking to him for protection the way wolf young looked to their sires. He gathered the pup carefully into his arms, feeling how small Ronan was in this form, how fragile despite the power that had just exploded out of him. The pup buried its muzzle against Theron's chest and shook with silent sobs. "You are safe. I have you. Nothing will harm you." Marcus appeared at the edge of their shelter, sword drawn, eyes scanning the surrounding territory. "We have movement, north and west. At least 6 wolves, moving fast and coordinated." "Northern scouts?" "Has to be. That power surge was like a beacon fire." Theron looked down at the exhausted pup in his arms, then at Alara, who was pale and shaking, then back at Marcus. The tactical situation was simple and terrible. They were outnumbered, caught in poor defensive position, with a child who had just exhausted himself and a healer who could not fight. The arithmetic said scatter, said abandon the horses and run separate directions, hope the northern wolves followed the more obvious targets while the others escaped. The arithmetic said sacrifice. Theron was done with that arithmetic. "We hold, you and I. Alara and Ronan get to the horses. If we fall, they ride hard for Shadowmere and do not look back." Marcus nodded once. No argument, no question. Just the same bone-deep trust they had forged over 25 years of keeping each other alive. They moved into defensive positions, using the rocks for cover, creating a narrow approach that would force attackers to come at them no more than 2 at a time. Basic tactics. The kind they had used 100 times in 100 different skirmishes. Except this time they were defending Theron's son, instead of some strategic position or supply cache. This time it was personal. The Northern scouts came in fast and professional. 6 wolves in loose formation, moving like they had done this many times before. They stopped just outside easy arrow range and shifted to human form, all armed with blade or bow, all watching Theron and Marcus with the wary calculation of warriors who knew exactly how dangerous a cornered alpha could be. The leader stepped forward. Male, perhaps 35 winters, with scars that told of someone who had survived the same war Theron had fought. His eyes went to the pup in Theron's arms, then to Alara, then back to Theron's face. "Alpha Commander Blackstone, heard you took the crown. Word travels. So does power. That surge we all felt, that was the pup?" Theron did not answer. Did not need to. The evidence was literally in his arms. Aldrich Ironmaw is going to want to know about this. A pup that powerful, that young, born to a Shadowmere king and a healer who served our packs. That creates complications. Is this the part where you try to take him? This is the part where I offer you safe passage to the Valen border. Neutral territory guaranteed by treaty. We escort you there, you continue south, we return north. No blood spilled, no incident to restart the war. And if I refuse? The scout's expression did not change, but Theron saw his companions shift slightly, hands moving closer to weapons. Then 6 of us die trying to stop you, and you still only make it perhaps a mile before reinforcements arrive. Bad odds for everyone, King Blackstone. Marcus leaned close, voice low. He is not bluffing. There will be a full patrol within 10 minutes of that power surge. We cannot fight them all and protect the boy. Theron knew Marcus was right. Knew the tactical reality. But accepting Northern escort meant acknowledging he needed their permission to travel through what was supposed to be neutral ground. Meant showing weakness. Meant every detail of this would reach Aldrich and become political leverage. It also meant his son lived to see tomorrow. We accept your escort to the Valen border, then we part ways. The scout nodded and made a gesture to his companions. They relaxed fractionally, but did not lower their weapons. Professional courtesy between warriors who had been enemies too long to ever fully trust each other. The ride to the Valen border took 6 hours that felt like 6 days. The northern scouts maintained careful distance, professional and watchful. Ronan shifted back to human form after an hour, exhausted and disoriented, and fell asleep against Theron's chest. Alara rode in silence, her face a mask of controlled terror. Marcus kept his sword ready and his attention moving, watching for ambush that never came. By the time they saw Valen's border fort, the sun was setting, and Theron's shoulder was screaming from holding Ronan in the same position for hours. He did not care, did not matter. His son was safe and warm and sleeping soundly, and that was worth any amount of physical discomfort. The northern scouts stopped at the border stones. This is where we part. Aldrich will hear about today. About the boy. About you traveling through our territory with a pup who carries that kind of power at 7 winters. Tell Aldrich I will speak with him, formally, when I return to Shadowmere. Will you? The scout's tone suggested doubt. Theron met his eyes and let every ounce of command, of authority, of sheer alpha dominance show. I keep my word, even to enemies. Especially to enemies, the scout corrected quietly. That is what makes you different from some who wore the crown before you. Then they were gone, melting back into the northern borderlands. Theron watched them go, and wondered if that had been respect in the scout's voice, or merely professional courtesy between warriors who had survived the same hell. Perhaps both. The Valen border fort was a study in defensive architecture. Watchtowers, stone walls, clear killing fields in every direction. The kind of stronghold you built when you wanted everyone to know you were neutral, but far from defenseless. The gates opened and a woman emerged, flanked by guards in Valen colors. Perhaps 38 winters, golden hair bound back in warrior braids, wearing armor that was both functional and finely crafted. Her eyes went to Theron, then Marcus, then the sleeping child in Theron's arms. Isolde Valen, Theron's betrothed, the woman he was meant to bond with to seal the alliance between their packs. She took in the scene with quick assessment. Well, this is unexpected. Lady Isolde, Your Majesty, I was not expecting you for another week, certainly not with unexpected company. There were complications. I can see that. She gestured them through the gates, and Theron dismounted carefully, trying not to wake Ronan. The boy stirred, but did not wake, just pressed closer to Theron's chest with a small sound that made something in his heart ache. Inside, Isolde led them to a private chamber and dismissed her guards. When she turned back, her expression had shifted from public courtesy to something more genuine. I assume she is the reason you look at me with respect but no desire. Isolde's eyes were on Alara, who had gone very still. That is complicated. Everything about you is complicated, Theron. It makes you simultaneously the best and worst choice for an alliance bonding. Isolde moved to a sideboard and poured warmed wine, handed cups without asking. When she reached Alara, she paused. I have known for years there was someone. I just did not know she came with a child. Alara found her voice, rough from hours of silence. I did not know he would be king, did not know about the betrothal. I only knew I needed to keep my son safe. From him? From everyone. Isolde studied Alara for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I understand that better than you might think. She sat gracefully, every movement controlled and precise. Theron had always appreciated that about Isolde. Her absolute mastery of herself. her ability to see political reality clearly and act accordingly. So, the situation as I understand it. You are King of Shadowmere, betrothed to me for an alliance my pack desperately needs. She is the mother of your 7-year-old son, who apparently has enough power to alert 3 territories. And you are bringing them both back to Shadowmere, where your council will lose their collective minds. That is accurate. May I ask what your plan is? Claim Ronan publicly before Corvus can manipulate the narrative. Recognize Alara as his mother. Deal with whatever comes. That is not a plan. That is barely a hope. It is all I have. Isolde took a long drink and Theron saw something in her face that looked almost like sympathy. Your chief advisor will call this a threat to stability. The northern packs will try to claim the pup based on the mother's service to them. Your council will demand immediate bonding to me to legitimize succession. All of that assumes no one tries to kill the boy to simplify matters. I know. So again, what is your actual plan? Marcus cleared his throat. We were hoping you might have suggestions. Isolde looked at Marcus, then back at Theron, then down at the sleeping child. Something shifted in her expression. Some calculation being made and set aside. I might, but it requires honesty from all of us. Painful honesty. She set her cup down with deliberate care. I am with child. The room went very still. Theron felt the words hit him like a physical blow. We have never... I know, it is not yours. Isolde's voice was steady, but there was something raw underneath. Something that spoke of loss and complicated choices and secrets kept because the alternative was destruction. His name was Captain Aldrin Voss. He died 2 years ago in a border raid. We were lovers for 5 years. Secret, obviously. A high-born wolf and a common soldier. The kind of story that ends badly in every tale. Theron heard Alara's sharp intake of breath. He was your brother? Yes. We both trained in Aldrich's healer programs. He went to the front lines. I went to the healing tents. The connections formed, the implications spreading. Does anyone know? About the child? No. I have been concealing it for 4 moons. Another 2 and it will be impossible to hide. Isolde stood and paced to the window. I agreed to bond with you because I needed legitimacy for my child. A dead mate's widow is sympathetic. An unwed mother with a soldier's bastard is a scandal. But a queen bearing the king's heir is beyond question. And now? Now you have a son who needs legitimacy too. And a woman you clearly care for, even if you are too stubborn to admit it. And I have a child I need to protect. She turned back. So here is what I suggest. We maintain the betrothal publicly. Nothing changes in appearance. The alliance holds. But we quietly arrange terms for calling it off. 6 moons, perhaps a year. Long enough for your son to be recognized and accepted. Long enough for me to present my pregnancy as a late development from my dead mate's final leave. Political theater. The necessary kind. Everyone gets what they need. You get protection for your heir. I get legitimacy for mine. The alliance stays intact. We call off the bonding with mutual respect and public dignity. And if the council objects, then we remind them that political stability requires flexible thinking. Marcus was grinning despite everything. She is brilliant. I know, Theron said quietly. Thank you, Isolde. Do not thank me yet. This only works if you can control Corvus Ashenblade. He will see this child as a threat to his carefully maintained power structure. He will try to eliminate the problem. He can try. There was steel in Theron's voice. Isolde recognized it and nodded approval. Good. You will need that conviction for what is coming. They stayed at the Valen Fort that night. Ronan woke for the evening meal, still exhausted, but recovering with the resilience of youth. He ate everything put before him and asked endless questions about the castle, about wolves, about what it meant to be a prince. Theron answered as best he could, discovering that fatherhood was harder than commanding armies because children asked questions you did not have ready answers for. Why did mother leave you? It is complicated. Did you love her? I thought I did. For one night. Then war made it impossible. Do you love her now? Theron looked across the chamber to where Alara was speaking quietly with Isolde. 2 women who should have been rivals, but had somehow found common ground in shared experience of loving warriors who went to war and trying to protect children in a world designed to destroy innocence. I do not know, perhaps, if she will allow it. Ronan considered this with the gravity of a child forced to grow up too quickly. She is scared of you. I know. She should not be. You are not as mean as you look. Despite everything, Theron laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt rusty. I will try to remember that. They reached Shadowmere at midday, the castle rising from the landscape like a promise carved in stone. Theron had sent word ahead via fast rider. A brief message demanding the council assemble for emergency session, but giving no details. Corvus was waiting in the courtyard when they arrived. The chief advisor was perhaps 58 winters, gray hair still thick, posture straight despite decades since his last battle. His eyes took in everything with rapid assessment. Those eyes narrowed when they landed on Ronan. Your Majesty. Your message was concerning but vague. I trust there is explanation for bringing unknown civilians into the castle without proper vetting. There is. Council chamber. 1 hour, full assembly. Theron dismounted and helped Ronan down. The boy stayed close, picking up on the tension. Corvus's gaze never left the child. My king, if I might have a private word? 1 hour, Corvus. Council chamber. It was not a request. Corvus's jaw tightened, but he nodded and withdrew. Theron watched him go and felt the weight of what was coming settle on his shoulders. Marcus appeared at his elbow. He knows. Look at his face. He already suspects. Then we move quickly. Get them settled in the East Wing. Royal quarters. Guards I trust personally. No one enters without my explicit permission. And you? I am going to have a conversation with our chief advisor about the limits of his authority. The council chamber was full when Theron entered an hour later. 12 elders representing the major pacts and territories of Shadowmere. Corvus sat at the head of the table, playing interim authority with practiced ease. All stood when Theron entered. He let them stand for a long moment, establishing dominance through silence. Sit. They sat. Theron remained standing, using height and presence to control the room. During my diplomatic mission, I discovered something that impacts our succession. I have a son. The silence lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. Then voices erupted. A son? But your Majesty is not bonded. How old is this child? Who is the mother? Is this some northern trick? Silence. Theron's voice cut through chaos like a blade. The elders fell quiet. His name is Ronan. He is 7 winters. His mother is Alara Voss, a combat healer who served with distinction during the border campaigns. I am claiming him publicly as my heir and blood. One of the older counselors, Lord Heron, cleared his throat carefully. Your Majesty, with respect, a child born outside bonding cannot inherit. The law is explicit. Then we change the law. That requires full council approval. Majority vote at minimum. Corvus finally spoke, voice measured and calm. My king, I understand this is personal, but we must consider the kingdom's stability. You are betrothed to Lady Isolde Valen. That alliance is critical for our grain supplies and trade routes. Having a bastard recognized as heir creates complications that could... He is not a bastard, he is my son. Legally, there is no difference until you bond with the mother. I'm not bonding, Alara. Theron saw calculation flash in Corvus's eyes. Then bond Lady Isolde as planned. Have legitimate heirs with her. The boy can live here, receive education, be recognized as your blood, but succession must remain clear. He is the succession. Another counselor spoke, younger and more progressive. Your Majesty, perhaps compromise. Recognize the boy as your son and place him in succession pending your bonding to Lady Isolde. Future children take precedence, but young Ronan remains. No compromise, he is my heir. First, last, only. The room erupted again. Theron let them argue for 30 seconds, then raised one hand. Silence fell. I am not asking permission. I am informing you of fact. Ronan is my son. He will be trained as my heir. When I die, he takes this throne. Anyone who objects may speak now. Corvus stood, face carefully neutral. My king, I must object strongly. This child appeared from nowhere with no verification, no established background, at a moment of delicate politics. For all we know, this is northern manipulation to insert an agent into our succession. The accusation hung like poison. Theron felt his wolf surge, dominance mixing with rage. Careful, Corvus. I am being careful. Of the kingdom's interests. This woman, Alara Voss, served with northern forces. She has connections to their healing networks. She appears now, 7 years later, with a child she claims is yours. The timing is suspicious. Marcus was on his feet, hand on sword. Counselor Ashenblade, you are accusing the king's son of being planted. I am suggesting appropriate caution before restructuring succession around a child we have known less than a day. Corvus turned to the other counselors. I propose proper investigation. Verify bloodline through traditional means. Interview the mother extensively. Review her service and associations. If the child is legitimately the king's blood, wonderful. But we owe the kingdom certainty. The counselors were nodding. Corvus was giving them cover to delay, to investigate, to potentially reject Ronan while maintaining plausible righteousness. Masterful politics. Also treason dressed as prudence. Investigation approved. Theron said flatly. "You have 48 hours, full verification. Marcus supervises for objectivity." Corvus's mask slipped briefly, surprise and frustration before the professional facade returned. "My king, that is barely time to—" 48 hours. Then I make public announcement regardless of findings. Use the time wisely. The session dissolved in murmurs. Corvus remained seated, watching Theron with the flat expression of someone who had just lost a piece but had not conceded the game. Theron left before his control slipped. Before the wolf in him decided Corvus was a threat requiring elimination. He found Alara and Ronan in their assigned quarters. The rooms were palatial compared to the cottage they had left. Ronan was running from window to window, exclaiming over views. Alara stood by the fireplace, arms wrapped around herself, looking lost. Theron closed the door, and they were alone for the first time since the tavern. "The council wants to investigate. Verify Ronan's bloodline. Question you about your service." "I expected that." "Corvus is calling you a northern agent." "I expected that too." Alara turned to face him, and Theron saw exhaustion in every line of her. "I am not an agent. Never was. I just tried to keep my son alive." "I know." "Do you?" "Because 7 years ago you executed prisoners I had healed and called it necessity. How do I know you will not decide Ronan is politically inconvenient and make him disappear for the kingdom's good?" The accusation struck harder than any blade. Theron stood there accepting it because he deserved the doubt, because trust was earned and he had done nothing to earn hers. "Because you are still here, because I brought you into the castle instead of taking Ronan and sending you away. Because I am standing before a council calling for your head and claiming your son as my heir anyway." He moved closer, not crowding, just closing distance enough to speak without Ronan overhearing. "I did terrible things in war, things I will never forgive myself for. But Ronan is not a tactical decision. He is my son, and I will burn this kingdom before I let anyone harm him." Alara's eyes were wet, but she did not look away. "You mean that?" Every word. They stood there in firelight, two people who had broken each other 7 years ago, trying to determine if the pieces could ever fit again. Ronan's voice cut through the moment. "Father, are all these rooms ours?" "Father?" The word still felt foreign and precious. "Yes, all of them." "This is amazing, Mother. Look at this bathing room." Alara smiled despite everything and went to admire. Theron watched them together and felt something ease in his chest. Perhaps this could work. Perhaps they could build something from wreckage. Perhaps. The investigation took exactly 48 hours and confirmed what Theron already knew. Blood rights proved Ronan carried Blackstone lineage. Scent markers matched. Physical characteristics aligned perfectly with documented traits of the late King Aldrich. The background verification was more complicated. Alara's service record showed she had treated both Shadowmere and Northern wounded, had been stationed at facilities serving both sides during Armistice, had communications with Northern healing personnel that could be interpreted as intelligence work or simply professional coordination. Corvus argued the former. Marcus argued the latter. The council split evenly. Then, on the morning of the third day, a delegation arrived from the Northern Pax. Aldrich Ironmaw himself. 20 warriors, full diplomatic protocol. All the formality of a state visit, except state visits were arranged moons in advance, and this one appeared with 4 hours' warning. Theron met them in the great hall with full ceremony. Crown, throne, council arrayed behind him, Marcus at his right. Every display of power and authority he possessed. Aldrich was 62 winters and looked carved from mountain stone. Gray hair, gray beard, scars telling stories of survival. He moved with deliberate care of someone who had seen too many battles and knew exactly how much he had left to give. Their eyes met and Theron saw recognition. Mutual respect between enemies who had fought too long to hate each other anymore. Alpha King Blackstone. "Alpha Ironmaw, welcome to Shadowmere. Though I admit your arrival is unexpected, as was the power surge that alerted half my territory 3 days past. A pup, they tell me. 7 winters old. More power than most full-grown alphas." Aldrich's gaze moved to where Ronan stood with Alara, the boy trying to hide behind his mother while also trying to see everything. "That pup, I assume." "My son, Ronan. And the mother is Alara Voss, who served in my healer training programs before transferring to your forces, who treated my wounded during Armistice, who I am told disappeared 7 years ago under mysterious circumstances." Theron felt the trap closing. "What do you want, Aldrich?" "What I have wanted for 7 years. Justice for 47 innocents killed in a supply raid that was not a supply cache. Acknowledgement of actions taken by both sides. A truth commission to prevent future tragedies." Aldrich stepped forward. But now there is complication. A pup who carries both our bloodlines, Shadowmere through you, Northern Pax through his mother who served our people. That boy is either a bridge or a weapon depending on how we choose to use him. He is neither. He is a 7-year-old child. Children grow, and when they do, they inherit their father's sins. Is that a threat? It is truth. The hall went silent, every eye on the two alphas facing each other across decades of bloodshed. Then Corvus spoke from behind Theron. Alpha Ironmaw raises valid concerns. The pup's mixed loyalties could pose security risks. Perhaps wisest course is... He stopped because Ronan had stepped forward, had walked from behind his mother, and was standing in the space between Theron and Aldrich. Small, fearless, 7 winters old, and walking toward the Northern Alpha like he had no concept of danger. Ronan, no. Alara moved to grab him, but Theron held up one hand. Let the boy speak. Ronan looked up at Aldrich with those gold alpha eyes. My mother says you lost people in the war, and my father was there, and he did things that hurt you. Aldrich knelt slowly, bringing himself to eye level. That is true. She says war makes people do bad things, and that my father has to carry those bad things forever. Also true. Do you want to hurt him for the bad things? Aldrich was silent for a long moment. I want your father to acknowledge what happened, to say it clearly, to help families understand why. That is not the same as hurting him. Ronan nodded seriously. Because understanding is better than revenge. Where did you learn that? My mother. She says revenge just makes more dead people. Aldrich looked past Ronan to Alara, then back. Your mother is wise. He stood and addressed Theron directly. I am not here to take your son. I am here to propose something different. Joint development. Northern iron and timber with Shadowmere crafting and forges. Profits divided among families who lost loved ones on both sides. Reparations through cooperation instead of punishment. In return, public acknowledgement. You admit the supply raid was tragic intelligence failure. You admit the prisoner executions happened. You agree to joint inquiry into what went wrong and how to prevent recurrence. Aldrich paused. And you let me tell the families myself that justice matters more than revenge. It was exactly what Corvus had warned against. Exactly the admission that could destabilize everything. It was also right. Theron opened his mouth to answer, and the arrow struck. It came from somewhere in the upper gallery. Theron's instincts reacted before conscious thought. He was moving, diving toward Ronan, trying to cover the boy. But Ronan was faster. The pup shifted mid-stride, wolf form exploding out in a burst of power that scattered chairs. The young wolf that appeared was bigger than 3 days prior, growing impossibly fast, and it launched itself not away from danger, but toward it. Toward Aldrich. The arrow meant for the Northern Alpha struck Ronan instead. The pup yelped and went down hard, red spreading across black fur. Alara was screaming. Theron was roaring. Marcus had his blade out, scanning for the archer. Aldrich's warriors formed defensive wall around their alpha, who was staring at the fallen pup with something like horror. And in the chaos, Corvus Ashenblade drew a concealed blade and threw it. Not at Aldrich, at Theron. Marcus took the blade meant for his king, went down hard, still breathing but bleeding badly from his side where the steel had sunk deep. The castle erupted. Aldrich's warriors against Corvus's hidden loyalists. Theron's guards trying to separate combatants. Civilians screaming and fleeing. And in the center, a 7-year-old wolf bleeding on stone floors because he had tried to save an enemy's life. Theron gathered his son carefully, feeling blood soak into his clothes. The pup was whimpering, trying to shift back, but lacking strength. Alara was there instantly, healer training overriding panic, hands moving over the wound. Silvertip. The arrow has silver. I need my supplies. I need the healing chamber. I need the healing wing, now. Theron stood with his son in his arms, and his shield brother bleeding, and his chief advisor holding a bloodied blade and the fragile piece threatening to shatter. He looked at Corvus and saw no remorse, just cold calculation. It had to be done, for the kingdom. Marcus was gasping. Aldrich's healers already working to stabilize him alongside Shadowmere's. For the kingdom, Corvus repeated. Before your guilt destroys everything our people built. Before you ruin us with truth. Guards seized Corvus, took his weapons. The advisor did not resist, just kept talking. You think you have won? Admitting atrocities will bring peace? It will bring war. Hardliners on both sides will use your confession to justify resuming conflict. And that pup, that abomination of mixed blood and impossible power, will be the spark that burns it all. Remove him from my sight. They dragged Corvus away, still preaching his gospel of necessary cruelty. And Theron stood in a hall splattered with blood, holding his dying son, watching his closest friend struggle for breath and realizing the old advisor might be right. Sometimes truth did destroy more than it healed, but he was done choosing which lives mattered and which did not. Done with necessary evils and acceptable losses. Done doing arithmetic with souls. Aldrich approached slowly, hands visible and empty. I will send for our best healers, the ones who specialize in silver poisoning, if you will accept help. Why? Because that pup just tried to save my life, and I am tired of burying the young. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not absolution. Just mutual recognition of two wolves who had done terrible things for what seemed like good reasons and were finally ready to stop. Send your healers. Together they carried the wounded toward the healing wing. Former enemies united by the simple fact that a child's life mattered more than pride. Behind them, the council chamber stood empty except for blood on stone and echo of violence. And in the dungeons below, Corvus Ashenblade smiled in his cell because he had proven his point. Some truths were too dangerous to speak, even if he died for saying so. The healing wing smelled like blood and silverleaf, the particular bitter scent of the herb that counteracted silver poisoning but could kill just as easily if the dosage was wrong. Theron stood against the wall and watched northern healers work alongside Shadowmere's physicians on his son's small body, and wondered if redemption always required blood sacrifice. Ronan lay unconscious on the healing table in human form, held there by drafts the healers had poured down his throat to prevent shifting during treatment. The arrow had entered just below his left shoulder blade, missing the heart by perhaps 2 fingers' width. The silver coating was leaching into his blood, attacking the wolf inside, trying to kill the very thing that made him what he was. The northern healer, an older woman with hands that moved with absolute surety, was extracting fragments with tools made of bone and blessed wood. No metal, nothing that would react with silver already in the wound. 4 more shards. The pup is strong, his wolf fights hard. Elara stood opposite, assisting with the precision of someone who had done this countless times in field conditions where proper supplies were luxuries. Her hands were steady, despite tears running down her face. Professional to her core, even when treating her own son. Theron wanted to be closer, wanted to help, but he had already been told twice to stay back, that his alpha energy was making the boy's wolf respond in ways dangerous during healing work. So he stood against the wall and felt useless. Marcus was in the next chamber. The blade had gone deep into his side, missing vital organs, but causing massive blood loss. Shadowmere's master healer was working on him with grim determination. Aldrich stood in the corridor between the 2 rooms, his warriors forming perimeter that was part protection and part statement. The Northern Alpha had not left since the attack, had not made threats or demands, just stood witness as former enemies tried to save each other's people. The 5th fragment came free, then the 6th. The northern healer worked in focused silence. When the final shard hit the tray with a small sound, Theron felt something ease fractionally in his chest. That is all the silver. Now we flush his system before it can spread further. She reached for a vial of dark liquid. Alara's eyes widened. Is that nightshade essence? Highly concentrated. It counteracts silver poisoning, but the dosage must be exact or we poison him trying to save him. The healer measured drops with absolute precision into a prepared tea. Made Ronan drink it despite his unconscious state, tilting his head back, massaging his throat to make him swallow. Now we wait. If his wolf is strong enough, he will fight off the silver. If not, she did not finish, did not need to. Theron moved to the bedside, finally allowed close now that the treatment was complete. He took Ronan's small hand, feeling how cold his skin was, how fragile he looked lying there with bandages and healing marks drawn on his chest in ash and blessed water. Stay with me, do you hear? Stay. The boy's breathing was too fast, too shallow, his wolf fighting poison in his blood. Marcus's healing took 3 hours. When the master healer finally emerged, exhaustion was visible in every line of his weathered face. We stopped the bleeding, stitched what could be stitched. The rest depends on him. Will he live? The next 2 days will tell. If he makes it through without corruption or fever, his chances are good. Can I see him? He is unconscious, will be for at least 12 hours. But yes. Marcus looked diminished in the healing bed, bandages wrapped around his torso, his breathing shallow but steady. Each breath a small victory. Theron sat beside the bed and put his head in his hands. You foolish, loyal bastard! Why did you take that blade? But he knew why. Because that was what Marcus did. What he had always done. Taken hits meant for Theron, carried burdens that were not his. Been the brother Theron needed when blood family was too busy preparing him for kingship to remember he was also just a man. I cannot lose you, not you. The words came rough and Theron did not stop them. Here, in the quiet of the healing wing, with only unconscious witnesses, he could admit what he would never say in council chambers. Marcus was what kept him human, the only person who remembered who Theron had been before crown and war and command. If Marcus died, Theron was not certain there would be anything left worth saving. A hand touched his shoulder. Theron looked up to find Aldrich standing there, weathered face showing something that might be sympathy. Your second is a good man, loyal beyond measure. He is my brother, in every way that matters. I know. I had one too. Lost him in year 12. Border skirmish too small to even make the records. Aldrich pulled up another chair and sat heavily. He threw himself on a northern blade meant for me. Saved 4 of us. I carried what remained back to his family and tried to explain why duty required his sacrifice. Theron looked at the Northern Alpha and saw his own future reflected. The weight of survival, the guilt of being the one who lived. Did it get easier? No. But you learn to carry it. You honor their sacrifice by being worthy of it. They sat in silence, 2 alphas who had spent years trying to kill each other, now united by understanding the cost of command. The boy, Aldrich said finally. Why did he do it? Why try to save me? Because his mother taught him revenge just makes more dead people. Wise woman? Yes. Aldrich stood and moved to the window. When your chief advisor loosed that arrow at me, he was trying to restart the war. Make my death look like your assassination attempt. Both our packs would have demanded blood. Peace would have shattered. I know, but your son stopped it. Took the arrow himself. And your second took the blade meant for you. 2 acts of sacrifice that saved more lives than they will ever know. What happens now? Now we decide if those sacrifices mean something. If we are finally ready to choose peace over pride. The council wants public trial for Corvus. Let them have it. Let them hear what he has to say. Let them understand the choice he made and why. He tried to kill you, tried to kill me, shot a child, and believed absolutely he was saving the kingdom. That is the dangerous part. Not that he was evil, that he was convinced he was right. You are defending him? I am understanding him. There is a difference. I have made terrible choices for good reasons too. So have you. The question is whether we learn or repeat them. The next morning brought unexpected trouble. 40 guards refused their posts. Not desertion, not mutiny. Just quiet, firm refusal to serve under a king who would admit to war crimes and legitimize a bastard heir. Corvus's people. Loyalists who believed the old advisor's vision of survival over accountability. Warriors who had made the same hard choices and did not want to face judgment. Their captain was Torvin. 52 winters, 3 decades of service. He stood before the throne with his 40 behind him and spoke with certainty. Your Majesty, we are not traitors. We bled for this kingdom, lost brothers, made choices we will never forget. But we will not serve under a king who calls those choices crimes. I have not called them crimes. I called them what they were. Terrible necessities we must own. And when northern packs demand trials, when they want us in chains for following orders, then we face it together. That is not good enough. Torvin's voice roughened. I executed prisoners too. On your father's orders. On Corvus's orders. If admitting that means I hang, I would rather die fighting than wait for the noose. The 40 shifted, hands moving toward weapons, not threatening yet, just ready. Aldrich stepped forward before Theron could respond. I know your name, Captain Torvin. 3rd Battle of Narrow Pass. You held a bridge for 8 hours against forces that should have overwhelmed you in minutes. Saved an entire village evacuation. Torvin's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? Because I commanded the forces trying to take that bridge. Lost 43 warriors trying to break your position. I put your name on a list of wolves I wanted to kill personally if I ever got the chance. Tension ratcheted higher. Guards reached for weapons on both sides. Then Aldrich did something unexpected, extended his hand. But that was war. And I respect a warrior who holds his ground against impossible odds. So I tell you now, Captain, there will be no trials, no hangings, no chains for wolves who followed orders. Torvin stared at the offered hand. Why should I believe you? Because I could have demanded trials. Used King Blackstone's guilt to destroy every warrior who served under him. But I am not interested in revenge. I am interested in making certain the next generation does not make our choices. Aldrich's hand remained steady. Your king is trying to give you something most warriors never get. The chance to lay down the weight. To admit what happened and move forward without it destroying you. That is not weakness. That is courage. Slowly, Torvin reached out and clasped Aldrich's hand. Firm grip. Warrior acknowledging warrior. No trials, you swear it. On my honor as Alpha. There will be truth. Acknowledgement. Reparations to families. But no trials, no executions. Just honesty and the chance to do better. Torvin looked at his warriors, then back at Theron. And the boy, your heir, stays, gets recognized, gets trained, gets the chance to be better than all of us. The captain stood there for a long moment. Then he knelt. 40 guards knelt with him. We serve the crown, whatever that means now. Theron felt something shift in his chest. Rise, all of you, and thank you. Ronan woke on the third day. Groggy. Disoriented. Immediately trying to shift until Alara held him down gently, explaining he could not yet, not until the silver was completely purged. The boy looked at Theron with those two old eyes. Did I save him? The northern man? You did. Took the arrow meant for him. Good. Mother says killing is easy, saving is hard. Theron felt his throat tighten. Your mother is right. Am I in trouble? For shifting without permission? You are not in trouble. You are a hero. Ronan considered this seriously. Heroes hurt a lot. Yes, they do. Marcus woke the next day, trying to sit up before collapsing back with a groan that brought healers running with pain drafts. By the time Theron arrived, his second was sedated, but conscious. You are an idiot. Takes one to know one. Marcus's voice was rough, but his eyes were clear. The council? Still standing? Barely. Corvus's loyalists tried to revolt. Aldrich talked them down. Diplomatic. Yes. Theron sat. I thought I was going to lose you. Cannot get rid of me that easily. Who would keep you honest? Comfortable silence. 25 years of friendship. So what now? Lock Corvus up forever? Execute him? Public hearing. Let him speak his piece. Let everyone hear his reasoning. Then judgment. Dangerous. He is persuasive. Then we deal with that. I am done with secrets. Marcus studied him. You have changed since finding the boy. Have I? Yes. Still carrying the weight, but not drowning anymore. Theron thought about Ronan asking if heroes hurt. About Alara's steady hands. About Aldrich extending mercy. I'm trying to be worthy of sacrifices people keep making for me. Then you are halfway there. The public hearing for Corvus Ashenblade took place in the Great Hall with both packs present. Shadowmere and Northern. Every major faction represented. The gallery packed with civilians, warriors, families who had lost people. Corvus stood center, hands bound but head high. No shame, no remorse, just absolute certainty. Theron sat on the throne and tried to remember this man had served his father for decades, had helped hold the kingdom together, had made decisions no one else would, had also poisoned a king and shot at children. Chief Advisor Corvus Ashenblade, you stand accused of attempted murder and treason. How do you answer? Guilty on all counts. The admission sent murmurs through the crowd. Corvus spoke over them. I tried to kill Alpha Ironmaw because his death would have prevented King Blackstone from making catastrophic mistakes. I tried to remove the king because he would sacrifice security for guilt. I committed treason because serving the kingdom sometimes means betraying the crown. Silence fell. Corvus turned, addressing everyone. You want to know why I poisoned King Aldrich? Because he would have offered Theron's trial as peace gesture. Would have exposed every tactical decision, every prisoner executed, every village burned, every choice that kept us alive. His voice grew stronger. And what would that accomplish? Truth? Justice? No. It would tear both kingdoms apart. Give hardliners justification to resume war. More sons would die, all in the name of honesty. Corvus faced Theron. I did what you lacked stomach for. Chose survival over righteousness, the living over the dead, and I would do it again. The hall erupted, some supporting Corvus, some demanding execution. Theron raised one hand. Silence. You are right about one thing. Truth is dangerous, can destroy like any weapon. He descended from the throne, walking until he stood face to face with Corvus. But lies destroy slower. Rot institutions from inside. Make monsters of good wolves who think ends justify means. Create cycles where each generation justifies new atrocities by pointing to old ones. You want me to be grateful? Corvus's eyes were hard. I want you to admit I was right. You were not. You were pragmatic, effective. You kept the kingdom standing. But you were not right. Theron turned to the assembly. 15 years ago, I was a commander following orders. I burned what scouts said was a supply cache. It was refugees. 47 dead. Then I executed 23 prisoners because they would slow retreat and get my warriors killed. Absolute silence. I told myself for years those choices were necessary. That arithmetic worked. That saving 8 lives was worth 23 deaths. That tactical considerations justified moral compromise. Maybe in that moment, with limited knowledge and heartbeats to decide, those were the only choices available. But that does not make them right. Makes them terrible. Makes them choices I carry forever. Makes them things that should never happen again. He gestured to Aldrich. Alpha Iron Maw lost 43 warriors taking a bridge. Captain Torvin held that bridge and saved a village. Both did what they thought necessary. Both lost people. Both carry scars. We can keep carrying them in silence, letting them fester and poison every choice. Or we can acknowledge what happened, help families understand why, and try to build something better. A woman stood in the gallery. Old, gray-haired, widow's black. My son was one of the 23. He was a healer. 16 winters. You killed him yourself. Theron felt every eye on him. Yes, I did. I remember his face. Will remember until I die. Why? Because he would have called reinforcements. Because my warriors were exhausted and outnumbered. Because I chose my people over his. That is not good enough. I know. Nothing I say will ever be enough. Cannot give you your son back. Can only offer honest acknowledgement and promise to help ensure no other mother loses a child to necessity. The woman was crying. I hate you. You should. You have every right. Then why admit it? Why not bury it like he says? She gestured at Corvus. Because my son almost died stopping this cycle. I want him to grow up in a world where we do not keep sacrificing pups to pay for our mistakes. Aldrich stood. 8 more families are here. Families who lost loved ones when Commander Blackstone executed prisoners. I asked them to come, to hear, to decide if acknowledgement matters. One by one they stood. Mothers, fathers, siblings, all wearing loss. Aldrich addressed them. This man killed your loved ones. Admitted it, explained his reasons. Now you choose. We can demand justice. Put him on trial. Maybe execute him. Then what? Does that bring anyone back? Stop the next commander from the same choice? A man spoke, voice rough. What is the alternative? Reparations. Joint development. Profits to families who lost people. Memorial for all who died. Education so the next generation knows what happened and why it should never repeat. And him? The man pointed at Theron. He lives with it, carries it publicly, uses his guilt to build something better. That is the price. Another family member stood. That is not justice. No, but justice means more death. Trials leading to executions, leading to retaliation, leading to war. I offer something different. Acknowledgement, reparations, peace. Not because anyone deserves it, because we are tired of burying our young. The families talked among themselves, grief and anger mixing with exhaustion and desperate hope. Finally, the widow stood again. I want his word, the king's word, that my son's name goes on memorial, that his story gets told, that people remember he was 16 and wanted to be a healer and died begging for mercy. You have it. Theron's voice was steady despite the crack in his chest. His name was Davith, I remember. He will be on the memorial. The widow nodded slowly and sat. One by one, the others did the same. Not forgiveness, not acceptance. Just acknowledgement that revenge would not bring anyone back. Corvus laughed, bitter and knowing. You think this ends well? You think honesty builds kingdoms? Watch. Watch as truth tears everything apart. The execution happened at dawn 3 days later. Public. Witnessed. The price for attempting to murder an alpha and shooting a child. Corvus went to his death still convinced he was right. Still preaching pragmatic survival. His last words were warning. When this peace fails and war resumes, remember I tried to stop it. Then the headsman's blade fell and Corvus' Ashenblade was gone. Theron stood witness because it was his duty. Watched a man who had served the kingdom die because he valued survival over morality, and wondered if, in different circumstances, that could have been him. The memorial was unveiled 2 weeks later. White stone carved with names. All the dead from both sides. The 47 from the refugee raid. The 23 executed prisoners. Every name that could be verified. David's name was there, 16 winters, combat healer, executed during tactical retreat. Families came, Northern and Shadowmere together. Some wept, some stood silent, some spat at Theron's feet as he passed. He let them. He deserved it. Ronan stood beside him, small hand gripping Theron's. The boy had healed well, wolf burning through the last silver with resilience of youth. But he carried a scar now, physical reminder. Father, why are people angry at you? Because I killed their families. But you said it was necessary. It was. That does not make it right. Ronan processed this seriously. Growing up is confusing. Yes, it is. That night, after ceremonies and negotiations and endless politics, Theron found Alara in the gardens. She sat on a bench watching the moon rise, wrapped in a cloak against evening chill. He sat beside her without asking. They had gotten good at this over the past weeks, being near each other, not quite together, but not separate. Two people trying to determine if collision would destroy them or create something new. Ronan is finally sleeping. Wanted to hear about the memorial 3 more times. He needs to understand what happened, what it cost, what we are trying to prevent. Alara turned to him, and in moonlight she was beautiful. More than that, real, solid. Someone who had seen him at his worst and stayed. I hated you for 7 years. I know. I wanted you to suffer. To feel what I felt watching you execute those prisoners. Did it work? No, just made everything worse. Theron reached slowly and took her hand. She did not pull away. I cannot undo what I did. Cannot erase 7 years. Can only try to be better. Is that enough? I do not know, but it is all I have. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the moon climb. Somewhere Ronan slept safely. Marcus healed. Aldrich's warriors camped in careful truce with Shadowmere's guards. Peace was fragile, future uncertain, weight of the past still crushing. But maybe that was acceptable. Maybe peace was not meant to be easy or clean or final. Maybe it was just this. Choosing each day to try, to acknowledge, to carry weight together instead of alone. Alara leaned against his shoulder, and Theron put his arm around her. And they stayed that way until moonrise reached its peak. 2 months later, Theron stood in the same clearing where he had first made love to Alara 15 years ago. The same place where he had whispered promises before going off to burn refugees and execute prisoners. The irony was not lost on him. Alara stood across from him, moonlight painting her silver. This is where it started, where I thought love was simple. Nothing about us has ever been simple. No, but maybe that is better. Simple breaks easily. Theron closed the distance slowly, giving her every chance to run, to say no. She did not run. I cannot promise perfect, cannot promise easy, can only promise honest. Alara reached up and touched his face, fingers tracing lines 7 years had carved. I cannot promise forgiveness. Cannot promise I will not wake some night still angry. Can only promise partnership. Then that is what we build. He kissed her, and she kissed back. And it was nothing like that first time in a healing tent when they were young and desperate and thought they had forever. This was harder. Earned. Connection forged through shared trauma and survived grief. The claiming mark went on her throat, his teeth breaking skin in the traditional bite that bound wolves to each other. She marked him in return, pain sharp and sweet and permanent. When it was done, they stood bleeding slightly and breathing hard, knowing this was just beginning. That the hard work of building a life together was ahead. That scars did not disappear because you acknowledged them, but at least they would carry them together. 4 months later, the castle had settled into new patterns. Ronan trained with instructors from both kingdoms. Marcus had recovered fully and taken seat on Reformed Council. Isolde had given birth to a daughter and returned to Valen, alliance secure without political bonding. And Theron woke each morning to Alara beside him, and Ronan's laughter echoing through halls, and the weight on his chest fractionally lighter than the day before. The nightmares still came, the faces of the 23, the sound of Davith begging, the knowledge his choices had destroyed families. But Alara was there, and Marcus, and his son. And slowly, painfully, Theron was learning that carrying guilt did not mean drowning in it. He was reviewing trade agreements when the messenger arrived. Young, breathless, carrying a sealed letter. From the 5th Kingdom, Your Majesty. They say it is urgent. Theron broke the seal and read, then read again, passed it to Marcus without comment. The beta's expression went grim. This is bad. What is it? Marcus handed the letter to Aldrich, now semi-permanent in Shadowmere's council. A warning about conspiracy Corvus mentioned before he died. Theron stood and walked to the window where Ronan was sparring. The letter says the border wars were orchestrated, that someone wanted both kingdoms weakened, that the refugee raid and prisoner executions were part of a larger plan to create perpetual conflict. For what purpose? Control? Profit. The usual reasons people manipulate nations into destroying each other. Aldrich set the letter down. If true, then everything we suffered, every death, every sacrifice, was manufactured by someone pulling strings. We do not know if it is true yet. No, but Corvus believed it, and he was many things but not paranoid. So what do we do? Marcus smiled grimly. Same as always, deal with it, together. Aldrich nodded. Corvus tried to stop one war. Now we prevent the next. Only this time we do it right. Theron looked at his council. At the Northern Alpha, who had been enemy and become ally. At the second, who had taken blades for him. At the empty chair where Corvus had sat and made terrible choices for what he thought were good reasons. Then we investigate, quietly. Find out who orchestrated the wars and why. Make certain they cannot do it again. And if the trail leads somewhere we do not want it to go, then we follow it anyway, because I am done with buried secrets. That night, Theron stood on battlements looking over Shadowmere, the land he had bled for, killed for, almost destroyed trying to save. The nightmares would come. The weight would press. The 23 would haunt him until he died. But tomorrow Ronan would wake asking questions that made him think harder. Alara would be there, partner and equal. Marcus would make terrible jokes that somehow helped. And somewhere in Northern Territories, Aldrich would do the same work, carry the same weight, try to build something better. It was not redemption, not forgiveness, not the clean ending stories promised. Just the hard work of living with what you had done and trying to do better. And maybe that was enough. Theron turned from the battlements and went inside. Went to chambers where Alara waited. Went to check on his son one more time. Went to Marcus and shared wine and did not talk about nightmares they both knew would come. The war was over. Peace was fragile. Future uncertain. But tonight everyone he loved was safe. And sometimes that was all a man could ask for.